a little bit about filet crochet. That term might frighten you if you've never heard it before, or if you've tried to do it and found that it was difficult to understand the charts and such. But really, what is filet crochet? It's blocks that are either filled in or they are open. So we're going to start off by making a chain of 4. Then I'm going to turn. We're going to skip this stitch, this hole right under the turning chain and above the last stitch of the last row. And we're going to skip the next one, and we're going to go into the next one. This is essentially our first filet block. This is our chain 1, our double crochet, and our skip. We're going to chain 1 here, and we're going to skip this one and go into this one. We're going to chain 1, skip this one, and go into this one. Now this is the process for making open 3 double crochet blocks. Reason why we're calling these 3 double crochet blocks is because you have a double crochet, a chain 1, and double crochet. If this block were to be filled, you would put another double crochet here, and that would be a filled block. We're going to see that when we go around to the next row. Now I'm going to chain 4 again. I'm going to skip this chain and go into the next one. If our filet project, our chart, says this is open all the way around, then that's what we do. If this was a closed stitch, we would have made a double crochet here. So we're going to do a closed stitch next. Closed block, working into the space where the chain 1 was. Insert our hook in the space, yarn over and pull through, and finish our double crochet. Then we're going to make another double crochet. This is a closed block here, a 3 double crochet closed block. Make another double crochet in that space and another in the next space. Now we have 2 closed blocks, but we have 5 stitches because each block has 1 post, 1 stitch in common. This is 1 block, this is 1 block. So this stitch here is common to both blocks on either side. That's why you have to do a little bit of math when you're doing filet, but we're not going to get into that. Now we're going to put an open block here next. So we chain 1, skip 1, and go into the next one. And if you want to make this last one an open block also, we would skip that chain and go into the next chain. This is from our turning chain to give us another block. So that's basically how you do filet. On our previous row, we could have done chain 2, skip 2, and a double crochet there. Chain 2, skip 2, and a double crochet there. Of course, your count would be, you wouldn't have this leftover stitch because your count would be right for a filet piece. But this is just a little sample piece. Moving on from filet, I wanted to show you, some people ask me, what does it mean to crochet in a space? Well, here's the space. Your chains make up a space. You can have 5 chains there, you can have 2, but if you have any number of chains, you're going to have a space there. And what your pattern means, if it tells you to crochet in the space, is you're going to make your stitch, you're going to stick your hook in that space and yarn over and pull through and continue your stitch so that your yarn from your stitch is going over around that chain you had in the beginning, in the middle of the 2 stitches. Then I'll work in this stitch, then I'll work in the space. They call that the chain 1 space, Whenever you see chain 1 with a dash in the middle, chain CH-1, that means a chain you've already made. It was done previously. So that's the space that you want to work into. And on this one, I'm going to go around. So that's going to be my chain 1. And then I'm going to work in the top of the turning chain. This is not a pattern, so we're just kind of making this up as we go. Except that I'm going to back out of this because I want to change color here. I'm going to change to my blue. I'm going to chain 1. And I'm going to work a row of single crochets because I want to get around to my front side. You notice this is the back of my double crochet stitches. This is the front of my double crochet stitches. This is the front of my single crochet stitches, and this is the back of my single crochet stitches. See the difference? After you've been doing it a while, you'll be able to tell. So this work would not have a right or wrong side per se because we're turning every row. So one side of the piece is going to have, each side I should say, is going to have both right and wrong sides of the stitches. If you want what I would consider the right side, would be the side that we worked our very first row in. How do I know what that is? Your starting strand is always going to be on your left. That means this was my first row, and this is the front of it, and this is the back of it. Another thing people ask me about is working in the front loop and the back loop. So I'm going to show you that. I've chained 1. I'm going to turn and make a single crochet in my first stitch. Now, if my pattern is telling me to work in the back loop only, let's say it said back loop only. Look at your stitches. You see how you have your V here, and you have a back loop, this one here, and you have a front loop. So if it's telling you to go in the back loop, you're going to be working in these back loops here. So I'm going to insert my hook there in the back loop, yarn over and pull through and complete my stitch just as normal. The difference is where you place your hook. And I'm going to continue doing that for a few. Now a nice pattern is if you work in back loop one stitch, front loop in the other stitch. That makes a pretty pattern. Now I'm going to make one more back loop just for fun. Now if they're telling you to go into the front loop only, then you don't insert your hook here. You would insert it here under this front loop, and just be careful not to get the back loop also. Now how does that look? You can see on the back, this is where I worked the front loop. Your back loops remain. Here's where I worked the back loop. The stitch is covered. And on the front, where I worked the back loop, here's my front loop. And here's where I worked my front loop. My back loop is not showing. Now if I were to do a whole row of back loop each time, then you would develop a ridge. Here's a whole row of back loop only. See how the front part of it is like a ridge? If you keep on working that way and turning in the next row, continuing with back loop only. Now I've made a few rows here, and you see how you have ridges on both sides because I did back loop only for each row that I made. If I wanted the ridges just to be on one side, I would do back loop on one side, front loop on the other side, and then all my ridges would be on the same side. Here's a piece that was worked with the front loop on one row, the back loop on the other row. See your ridges here? And on the back, it's different, no ridges. Or that side, I should say, front or back. Yeah, this is the front. Now, remember that we want to make sure that we have the same number of stitches so we can count our stitches. You can count your V's or you can count your post of your stitches to make sure that you always have the same number. This is a stitch, this is a stitch. Okay. Another question I'm asked is, what does it mean to work between the stitches? Well, that means exactly what it says. If I was to work between the stitches, here's a stitch here, it's a double crochet, and here's a double crochet here. You go in between them, not in a stitch, not in the top of the stitch, but between the stitch. You're not going to go in here, not going to go in here. You're going to go between the two posts. That's between the stitches. So I would not go here. I'd go in this stitch, would not go in this stitch, but I would go between the two stitches. For the next one, not here, not here, in between. That's between, working between the stitches, and it gives you a different look. Now I could go between those stitches, and then I could come and work a couple of double crochets regularly, and then I could work between the stitches. Or I might want to skip a stitch. If you skip a stitch, generally you chain one to account for that space, depending upon what you're doing, of course. And there you go. So that's between.